In today's junk journal with me, I'm going to be using envelopes on my page as part of the Junk Journal January prompt for day 2, but I'm not going to use it how you think I might. So, normally when you add envelopes to a junk journal, you think about adding it as a bit of a pocket, so all the things that you can then tuck inside of the envelope. But what I decided to do is I had some of these glassine type envelopes that I had saved from different things that I've received, like in the post, and I decided to use it as a way to construct my page because, as you might notice, the size of the first page of this journal is not your average page size. It's a lot smaller. It was literally just a scrap of paper that I had that I decided to bind into the journal. And so I sort of knew when I did that I would need to make the page bigger. I mean, I could have worked on that, but that would have been a really tiny page because this is a passport size journal anyway, so you can imagine how small that is. And so I really wanted to have something larger to work on in terms of a surface to give me more opportunity for collage and all sorts of bits and pieces. So the first thing I started off by doing was seeing how big I wanted the envelope to be. So I had to cut it in half anyway because of how small this journal is. And I was just playing around with the layout and how I wanted the page to look. I knew I didn't want to have it be like a full-size page, so I still wanted to keep that sort of eclectic feel of it being a page that's a different size. But I think because it's a glassine envelope, you don't have such a harsh like divide and opaqueness between the next page. So I think there's kind of that bit of playing around with the translucency that helps this page to look a bit more unique, I think. So whilst I was, having a bit of a think about how I wanted the page to actually sit, I decided to move on to something else. So this is a pre-made sort of paper snippet roll that I created a few weeks ago. I did it without any like stitching or anything. It was just with a glue stick and all of my little paper scraps that I save, and I decided to create this big long strip with them, and I thought it would be perfect to tear from this, and it's just a great way to have some like pre-made little collage clusters ready to go. And it came in so handy for this because as soon as I had sort of the colors and the textures, I think, from the snippet roll, I kind of felt a lot more confident then with adding the envelope to the page, and I could sort of see how I wanted the page to turn out. So I wanted to have different things overlapping and creating that interest. I also folded the original page so that it was a bit shorter, and I was focusing things as well around having that brown page be the focal point almost. So, thinking about where I'm going to put my text eventually onto this layout. So I was sort of moving things around and making sure that I had that space and that I wasn't making this too busy, because that was the one thing I was thinking about with adding this snippet roll, is there's sort of a danger of like just adding this directly onto the page, and then I kind of have that moment of, okay, now what do I add to it? So I was going back and forth a little bit on which specific areas I wanted to include and where I wanted to add them on the page, but I just knew this would be important because this was kind of the base of the page that I was building up. And so, in a weird way, it almost felt like I was making the page itself rather than working on top of the page, if that makes sense. So, it was a really interesting way to work in this journal and to embrace the different sized pages I think that I had going on within this journal, and it definitely kept to the like sort of scrappy eclectic collage look and feel that I had from the cover that I did. And I really enjoyed keeping the colour scheme quite neutral with this one in terms of building up the base as well. So you'll just see here I'm making sure that everything is positioned where I want it to be, and then I'm just using my Pritt Stick glue stick, which is my go-to glue stick for using in my junk journals, to glue everything into place. Now, with the way that I included this envelope, I didn't actually glue over the top of or cover up any part of the envelope that actually still opens. So technically this entire page is also an envelope, and I don't know, I'm thinking about whether I want to include anything inside it. It could just be a good place for like some hidden journaling. What do you think? Should I include something in that page? What would you tuck inside? Because it almost feels like a bit of a secret pocket, because when I turn it over and you sort of see the reverse where you've got the opening of the envelope, I don't know if it's because of the material of the envelope that I've used. I don't think it's immediately obvious that it's an envelope. Like it kind of just looks like it's some like, translucent paper that I've used. So I think it's a really great sort of secret envelope almost that I've created on this page. And so I have the opportunity to add something, but then also I don't have to. Like sometimes I feel like I create pockets or envelopes in my journals with, all the good meaning of wanting to actually include something within the pocket. And then sometimes I never do. And then I think, oh, I've kind of made and decorated the pocket and then not actually put anything inside of it and moved on. And so I think this is kind of a happy medium in the sense that I can sort of get away with not including anything if I don't want to or I don't feel like it needs anything extra, but also I don't know, I quite like the way that the page looks at the minute, and so I'd have to think about what it is that I would actually include inside it to not detract from the page itself. So I think I'd have to have, something maybe on a piece of tracing paper perhaps, or on like white cardstock, something like that, so that maybe you could see like hints of any like writing or text that I've included, but I wouldn't want it to detract too much from the actual page that I've created itself, because I really like the way that it has come together and you've got the see-through elements and all the different layers sort of working together. And so I ended up just adding different bits of ephemera and things that I'd collected to this page. I added some washi tape, I added some tissue paper, which had some really nice, like sort of green, delicate patterns on that I really think helped to add detail without detracting too much from everything else that was going on. And also, in the spirit of envelope, I had a stamp which I thought was really cute from my friend in the Netherlands, so I had to include that because it's also another way of interpreting the prompt. So obviously the stamp was on an envelope that came through the post, and so there's a different way that you could interpret this prompt. You don't have to actually have a functioning envelope. You could just use a decorative element that is from an envelope and use that as your collage material. And I think because everything else was so neutral with this page, that I really like the way that the colours on the stamp pop, and I think it kind of is the right size for this journal as well, because it's the passport size. Like the stamp doesn't get lost, it almost becomes its own little focal point there. And I really love the way that it just sort of helped to frame that brown paper section as well that I've got going on, because then I felt like it really was a little journaling spot there on the left hand side, and I'd sort of clustered all my collage around it in terms of how I had laid it out onto the page. Of course, I had to come in as well and add some white details. I just really love the way that these are so subtle and yet they really pop on a page. And so, yeah, just a few little dots and scribbles and things to add some extra detail. And then it was time to add my text. So I decided just to go for a short quote with some bold hand lettering. So this is my favorite pen to use. It's a Tombow Fudenosuke, I think it's pronounced, and it's in the soft tip. And I just used this to letter on enjoy the little things, which I felt kind of is fitting for this journal because it's like a smaller size journal. And then also just the smaller elements that I had included on this collage. And I did add an extra sticker here just to have another pop of colour, and I think just to carry through some of the pink tones that I had going on with the page. So I was just seeing where it would fit on the page because I just felt like it needed a little something extra, and I thought this was the perfect addition for this page. But that's pretty much everything that I did for this junk journal with me for this page. I hope you enjoyed journaling along with me. Let me know down below in the comments what you have done for this day's prompt. Have you tipped an envelope in? Have you worked with an envelope that you'd maybe already included within your journal page? I'm really enjoying seeing everyone's pages already on Instagram and on YouTube. There's so many creative interpretations of the prompts, and we've only had 2 days.